Shabbos Daf Lamed Ches contain two Mishnayos, one 3/4 of the way through the daf and one all the way at the end of the daf. So the first half of the daf discusses what happens if you left food on a fire by accident. You accidentally violated the rabbinical prohibition of Shehiyah. The Gemara will also tangentially have a contradiction between Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda to what we had in yesterday's daf. And then when that discussion is finished, the Gemara will talk about the halacha of returning food to the fire. The Gemara will like to know when is it considered returning and when is it considered like you're doing a new cooking. It's not like you're putting it back on the fire. The Gemara will have about 5 conditions to that. Then the Gemara will bring the new Mishnah. The Mishnah discusses other heat sources, other heat devices like a kupach and a tanner and how they fit. The Gemara will discuss what a kupach is exactly and how it compares and where you're allowed to put things relative to a tanner. This will take us to the next Mishnah, which will discuss other sources of heat which aren't fires, secondary sources of heat, things which are heated by other things. The Gemara begins with a question that was asked to Reb Chia bar Abba. What is the halacha if somebody accidentally, b'shogeg, violated the Isser Shehiyah on Shabbos? Meaning he left a pot of food on the stove over Shabbos by mistake, b'shogeg. Now generally, if somebody violates an Isser on Shabbos, so whether or not he's allowed to use that thing that he made is dependent upon whether he did it by accident or on purpose. If he did it b'mezid, if he intentionally violated the halacha, he knew what he was doing, then what he did is forbidden. So if he cooked food, he's not allowed to eat it. If on the other hand it was b'shogeg, then what he did is permitted, he is allowed to eat the food. Here, it's slightly different. This is an Isser D'Rabbanan, and he didn't really do anything, he just left it from before Shabbos. So in a sense, it should be lighter, and there is a reason to say that it should be permitted, even it would be permitted even if he left it there on purpose. On the other hand, it could also be stricter because it's an Isser D'Rabbanan and people took these Isurim slightly more cavalierly, and it's possible that they would play games. If you allowed them to use the food, if it was b'shogeg, then they would do it. Then they would say, oh, I did it by mistake, I didn't realize. So the Gemara discusses this. So this question was asked to Reb Chia bar Abba, and he was quiet, he didn't have an answer. And then the next day, he answered them and he quoted the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that somebody who cooks food on Shabbos, if he violates the Isser on purpose, intentionally, then the food is forbidden. If he does it by accident, then the food is permitted. Says Reb Chia bar Abba, that's if he cooked food, meaning he put the food on the fire on Shabbos. Here, he just left it from before Shabbos, he just did an Isser Shehiyah. There's no difference between if he did it by mistake or if he did it on purpose. So now the Gemara says, hold on a second. He said there's no difference. He didn't say if both mistake and on purpose are mutter, or permitted, or if both mistake and on purpose are asr, forbidden. So the Gemara says it's a machlokes how to understand what he said between Rav Yosef and Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. So Rabbah and Rav Yosef together, they say, in the case of Shehiyah leaving food on the fire over Shabbos, it's mutter whether he did it by accident or on purpose, because he didn't really do anything. Even if he did it on purpose, he didn't do any action of Isser. He just left it from before Shabbos. Therefore, it's permitted. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said the opposite. Both by accident and on purpose are forbidden, because people were playing games and they were saying, "Oh, I did it by accident. I did it by accident." And therefore, we forbade even cases that were an accident. That way, it wouldn't help for people to say that I did it by accident. The Gemara now asks Akasha on Rabbah and Rav Yosef, who say that in both cases, whether it was left on the stove by accident or on purpose, it is permitted. The Gemara says, hold on a second, there's a brisa that says as follows. Somebody who left a pot of food on the fire over Shabbos, say if he left it there on purpose, it's forbidden. If he left it there by mistake, it is permitted. So now the Gemara says, now this doesn't seem to fit with either opinion. However, according to Nachman bar Yitzchak, that both cases are forbidden, I could work it out. And I could explain as follows. At some point in history, the Chachamim realized that people were playing games, and they were saying that they did it by mistake, even though they did it on purpose. So they made a decree, and they said that it's forbidden. As a matter of fact, the Gemara brings this decree that happened. So the case where the brisa says that it's permitted if they left it by mistake, that's before the decree was made. That's why it is actually permitted. It's because that decree was not yet made. That which Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said that it's forbidden even if it was left by mistake, that's after the decree, so that's not a problem. But according to Rabbah and Rav Yosef, that both cases, both by accident and on purpose, should be mutter, should be permitted. How could this brisa say that the case where it was left on purpose is forbidden? That will never fit. And if you want to say that we're referring to after the Gzeirah, then even the case of b'shogeg shouldn't fit. So Gemara agrees. Gemara says, you're right. It's a question, and now the Gemara quotes the actual Gzeira that was made, and the Gemara explains that people took this decree, that people took the Isser of leaving food on the fire on Shabbos lightly, and they were violating it, and then they were saying, I did it by mistake. So therefore, they made a rule that even if you did it by mistake, it's forbidden. That way it doesn't help to do that. The Gemara now quotes the second half of the Brisa, which we just discussed, and this half of the Brisa contains a machlokes between Rav Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara is going to note that both opinions are contradictory to that of Rav Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, which we learned yesterday on Daf Lamed Zayin. So in this Brisa, we are discussing fully cooked food which was left on the fire. So Rav Meir says it's mutter. The Gemara says, how could Rav Meir say that? Earlier we saw that Rav Meir says you're not allowed to leave food on the fire even if it's fully cooked. So the Gemara says that's not a contradiction. Earlier Rav Meir said you're not supposed to do it. Here he's saying that if you did, even if you weren't supposed to, you're allowed to eat it. Okay, now Rabbi Yehuda. Here Rabbi Yehuda says that it depends if the fully cooked food is improving or it's becoming worse as it is cooking more on the flames. So earlier Rabbi Yehuda had said that it is mutter, permitted to leave the food on the fire no matter what. He didn't say that it's only if it's not improving. So Gemara says it's also not a contradiction. Earlier we were talking about where it was cleared or covered. The coals were cleared or covered. And that's why it's mutter. Here we're talking about where it's not cleared or covered. And therefore if the food is improving as it's being left on the coals, it becomes forbidden. Now, the Gemara asks, what's the halacha if somebody left food on the stove on purpose? And it's a type of food which is fully cooked, but it's improving. So we had said before that that's forbidden. If you left it on purpose, it's forbidden. But here, it never actually improved. He left it there with the intent that it should improve, but then he took it off before it actually improved. So, is it still asur for him because he left it there in violation of the Isser of Shehiyah, or it's not because it never actually improved? So the Gemara brings a proof to this. The Gemara says that Rav Shmuel bar Nosson said in Abraham Chanina, when Rabbi Yossi went to Tzipori, he discovered people left stuff on the fire. So water that was left on the fire, he said that's mutter, because water doesn't improve as it's left on the fire, it just evaporates. So then he found eggs. Everybody knows that eggs, if you leave them on the fire for too long, they get great, they improve. So he said that's forbidden. So the Gemara assumes that the eggs did not actually have a chance to improve. He took them off before they improved. But he said it's forbidden anyway. So the Gemara says that proves that even though it didn't get a chance to actually improve, the fact that you left it, and it's a type of food that improves, makes it asur. So the Gemara says, no, he did make it forbidden, these eggs. These eggs he said they can eat because they never improved. He just said in the future you can't do such a thing. You cannot leave eggs on the fire over Shabbos because they will improve. Now the Gemara says, well, is this really true? The eggs improve as you leave them on the fire? They shrivel up. The Gemara says, yeah, Rabbi Chama bar Chanina said that Rebbe and I were once staying in the same place, and they brought us overcooked, shriveled up eggs, and we ate, and they were so small, from all the shriveling, they're as small as these little tiny apples. And we ate lots of them. They were delicious. The Gemara now goes back to the Mishnah and discusses the opinion, which was only Beis Hillel, that you are allowed to place a pot of food on the fire on Shabbos as long as it's fully cooked. Now the truth is we've been oversimplifying this because you aren't just allowed to take a pot of food out of the fridge and place it on the fire as long as it's fully cooked. You're only allowed to return a pot of food that you just took off the fire now because you're not doing a new cooking. You're continuing the old cooking, which was just briefly interrupted. Even Beis Hillel agrees to take food which is nowhere near the fire, it has nothing to do with the fire, and just place it on the fire is forbidden because that's mechzik mashal. It appears as if you're cooking it even though it's fully cooked already. Now, the question that the Gemara will discuss now is under what circumstances can you say that when I'm returning a pot to the fire, I'm continuing the previous cooking? And under what circumstances do you say, no, the previous cooking was lost, and this is a new cooking, and therefore even Beis Hillel would say it's forbidden? So the Gemara will discuss 5 different ideas. The Gemara will question whether or not they count as canceling the original cooking, so that it would be forbidden to put the pot back on the fire now, because it is a new cooking, it's not a continuation of the old one. And Beis Hillel, again, only allows you to put it back if it's a continuation of the old ones. First of all, the Gemara says, what if it's not Friday night, it's Shabbos morning, and it's not apparent that you are putting it back when you take it off? If you take a pot off the fire Friday night, it's obviously going to put it back because you still need the food to be hot for tomorrow. But if it's Shabbos day, so it's not obvious you're going to put it back. So, do you say that any pot taken off the fire Shabbos day, it is not obvious it's going to be put back? And one of the things you need to be able to say that I'm just putting it back, it's not a new cooking, is that it should be obvious. And therefore Shabbos day would be forbidden. So the Gemara says no. Even Shabbos day it's permitted. And the Gemara says that even Rav Hoshea agrees to that. And Rav Hoshea said the following thing. We were once in front of Reb Chia Rabbah, the great Reb Chia, and we brought a kettle of hot water from downstairs to upstairs, and we poured the water into a cup of wine, and we brought it back down and put it on the stove downstairs. So that was not an issue. And that apparently was during Shabbos day, or was a significant interruption, which is equivalent to Shabbos day. And therefore, you clearly see that you do not have to have it be obvious to anybody who's watching that you intend to put it back. Even Shabbos day, it's okay. Okay, next issue is, what if I put it down on the ground? Does that interrupt the original cooking, and now I cannot put it back anymore? This is a machlokes. Rav Zrika, in the name of Abba, in the name of Tadai, says it interrupts it. You can't put it back anymore. And Rav Ami and Rav Chia and Rav Yochanan say no, you are allowed to put that back. The rest of the same machlokes exists between Rav Dimi and Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda, both in the name of Rav Elazar. Now, the way it's stated there is as follows. One of them says you have to keep holding it in your hand, and the other one says no, even if you put it on the ground, the original cooking is not interrupted and you can still put it back. The Gemara later will ask, well, what if it's somewhere in between? It's not in your hand and it's not on the ground. But first, the Gemara has another thing, and this is, do you have to have in mind when you're taking the pot off the fire, do you have to know that you're intending to put it back on? So the Gemara quotes Rav Chizkiah in the name of Abaye that says that you have to have it in mind. Now the Gemara is not clear whether this condition is in addition to the fact that it's not placed on the ground, or it is besides, it is alternate to the fact that it's not placed on the ground. It's possible that you need both conditions. You have to have in mind that you're planning on putting it back, and you have to be still holding it in your hand. If you put it on the ground, or if you didn't have in mind, it's forbidden either way. Or it could be that either one's all right. If you had in mind that you're putting it back, it's okay, and it doesn't matter where you placed it in the meantime. Or if you held it in your hand the whole time, then it doesn't matter if you had in mind or not. The Gemara is not clear which is correct, and the Rishonim discuss it at length. Now asks, what if it's somewhere in between? What if it's not in your hand and it's not on the ground? It's hanging from a hook, or it's on a bed. So what's the halacha? So the Gemara leaves it as teiku. Next, the Gemara asks, what if you took the pot off the stove and you poured out the contents of a pot to a different pot? Is that now called a new cooking? If you want to put it back on the fire, it's not called putting back, and therefore it's forbidden? Or is it the same food? Even though it's a different pot, it's the same food, and therefore I could put it back on. Again, the Gemara leaves it as a teiku unresolved, and this takes us to the next Mishnah. Now, the first Mishnah, which we learned earlier, tells us the halacha of leaving a pot on a stove. Stove is called a kira. Stove is a rectangular clay device which has a fire burning in the bottom and has space for two pots on the top. Now, because it's very open, it has space for two pots, it doesn't contain much heat. As a matter of fact, of the three cooking devices that we will discuss, it contains the least heat. One level up from that is if you have a similar looking device that's square instead of rectangular and it only contains space for one pot on the top. So that's called a kupach. The kupach is hotter than a kira. Up till now, we've been discussing kira only. A kupach is hotter. And even hotter than that is called a tanur. That's an oven, which is an enclosed structure. It's closed on all sides. It just has a hole for you to put stuff in. There's a fire burning in the bottom of it, and the pot goes inside this closed structure. That is the hottest of all. And it slopes near the top, so the heat is actually retained inside even more. Now, the three, the kira, the kupach, and the tanur. The kira is the least hot, kupach is the middle, and tanur is the hottest. Up to now, we've been discussing kira. Now, our new Mishnah discusses kupach and the tanur. So first of all, tanur being the hottest of the three, the Gemara says it's forbidden to put anything on it or in it or leave it over Shabbos. Well, the Mishnah doesn't specify to place or to leave, but it's forbidden to have anything on it or in it over Shabbos, even if it was fueled by a fire that was burning just straw or wheat stalks or things like that, which doesn't leave much coals. It's still forbidden because the heat is very great. Now, kira we saw in the previous Mishnah, but now kupach is in between the kira and the taner. So the Gemara says kupach depends really what fueled it. If it's fueled by straw or stubble, then it's not a problem. We let you put stuff in it, and it's the same as a kira. If, however, it is heated with pressed olives or sesames or wood, so then we treat it like a taner. So being in between a kira and a taner, kupach has a split decision. As far as if it's heated with straw or wheat stalks, it counts like a kira. As far as if it's heated with pressed olives or sesames or wood, that's a much stronger fuel and it leaves coals behind. For that, it's treated like the hotter taner. The Gemara begins with a statement of Rabbi Yosef that this Mishnah, which we just learned, which says that it's forbidden to put or leave a pot of food inside an oven or on top of an oven, it's only inside or on top that's forbidden, but if you put it next to the oven, that's permitted, just like we saw earlier with regards to a kira. Now, Abaye challenges Rabbi Yosef when he says it's not true. It's forbidden to leave or have a pot of food be next to an oven, because the heat of the oven is so great that it's forbidden and it heats things even that are next to it. So Abaye says, I'm going to prove it to you from the Mishnah. If you look carefully at the Mishnah, Abaye assumes the Mishnah has to be talking about fires that were neither cleared nor covered. If they're cleared or covered, it's impossible to say that all these cases that are forbidden would really be forbidden. So Abaye says we're definitely talking about where it's not cleared or covered. Now Abaye says, look carefully here. The Mishnah says that the middle level device, the kupach, which has middle level heat, if it's burning wood, has the halacha of an oven, and it's forbidden to have something beyond it over Shabbos. That implies that if it would be like a kira, it would be permitted, even though it's burning wood. Now hold on a second. A kira that's burning wood, that's not cleared or covered, it's forbidden to leave stuff in it. So how can you tell me that it's forbidden because it's like an oven? It's not because it's like an oven. Kira is also forbidden in that case. So therefore, Abaye says it must be where it's not talking about where it's on top of the kira. It's talking about where it's next to the kira. And there, next to the kira, is permitted even if it's not cleared or covered and it's burning wood. But that clearly indicates that an oven is forbidden to put anything next to the oven. And therefore, Yosef must be wrong. So the Gemara rejects this. The Gemara says, no, your assumption, we are assuming that the entire Mishnah is discussing where it's not cleared or covered. It's not true. We're discussing where it is cleared or covered. And therefore, a kira, which is cleared or covered, even though it's burning wood, you are allowed to put something on top of it. And a taner, an oven, you're not allowed to. And the Gemara and the Mishnah therefore says that a kupach, if it's burning wood, is like a taner and it's forbidden, but kiras are permitted. The Gemara now says we have a brisa that says explicitly like Abaye. The brisa says as follows: concerning a tanor, an oven, so it doesn't matter what, you're not allowed to put a pot anywhere near it in any way, shape, or form. Even if it's burning just straw, you can't put a pot next to it, and certainly not in it, certainly not on top of it, and certainly not if it's burning wood. However, a kupach, so it depends. If it's burning straw, you're allowed to put a pot anywhere. And if it's not burning straw, if it's burning wood, then you're not allowed to put a pot even just next to it. So here you see explicitly, like Abaye, that it's forbidden to put a pot next to an oven no matter what it's burning. Okay, now the Gemara says, Racha, the son of Rava, said to Rav Ashi, I don't understand this kupach thing. On the one hand, you say it's like a tanor, and it's forbidden if it's burning wood. On the other hand, you say it's like a kira, and it's mutter if it's burning straw. So I don't get it. So Rashi said, yeah, it's in between. Its heat is less than a taner, and it's more than a kira. That's why it has the split halacha. Gemara now explains what is the physical difference between a kupach and a kira. So the Gemara says that a kupach has room for only one pot. It's a square. The fire is burning in the bottom. It has room for only one pot on top. A kira is like two kupachs next to each other. It has room for two pots. It's long. It's longer than it's wide. The Gemara brings a Mishnah that proves this. The Mishnah says, if you have a broken kira or kupach, when is it useless? It's important to know, because if it's useless, then whatever tumah it had goes off it. But if it's still useful, then it's still tamei. So the Mishnah says a kira is useless only if it's split lengthwise, because now it has no function. If it's split widthwise, so then each half can still fit one pot, because it used to fit two pots. However, a kupach, no matter which way you split it, because it's square, no matter which way you split it, no matter which way it breaks, it's functionless because it can't hold any pot anymore. And therefore, it is tahor, the tumah comes off. This takes us to the end of the Gemara, and now we get to another Mishnah. This Mishnah discusses other sources of heat, which may be used to violate the Isser of cooking on Shabbos. Up to now, we've discussed cooking over a fire, or coals, or something which counts as a fire. Now the Gemara discusses other objects which are heated by something else. So we will discuss three things: something which is heated by a fire, something which is heated by the sun, and hot springs. That's heated by the heat of inside the earth. So the Gemara says, first of all, something heated by the fire. You want to place an egg next to a hot kettle that it should roast, slightly at least. So the Gemara says you're not allowed to do that. Now, what about to fry an egg in the sun? Meaning you're not frying an egg in the sun, but you're frying it upon something which baked in the sun. So here you have a split thing. The roads, the sand and the dirt that baked in the sun, that is forbidden. But a scarf that baked in the sun is a machlokes. The Tanna Kama says it's forbidden, and Rabbi Yossi says it's mutter. The Gemara will explain why Rabbi Yossi has a difference between scarves and the roads. Now, what about hot springs? So the Mishnah says the following thing: the people in Tvaria, there were hot springs there, so they set up a pipe of cold water to run through hot springs. They set it up before Shabbos, so that it's running, so that over Shabbos the water that was running through it would be heated. Then they would have nice hot water on Shabbos. They didn't want to use the hot springs themselves. So the Chachamim said that's usher. You can't set up something to heat on Shabbos. It's still forbidden. It's forbidden to drink the water as hot water, and it's forbidden to use it to wash yourself. If, however, you set it up before Yontif and it heated on Yontif like that, then at least you're allowed to use it for drinking, because cooking for drinking is permitted on Yontif. So the Gemara asks, let's say somebody does cook in something heated by a fire, but not on a fire itself. Is that an Isser D'Oraisa? Or is it Nisr D'Rabbanan? So Rav Yosef says it's Nisr D'Oraisa, and if you did it by mistake, he has to bring a carbon chatas. Remember, Ravina says, I'll prove that you're right from a Mishnah. Mishnah says that it's referring to rinsing or soaking salty fish so that it becomes edible. So the Mishnah says that if it was already soaked before Shabbos, you're allowed to soak it on Shabbos, you're not really helping it. If not, then you're only allowed to rinse it, because the soaking would make it to be edible. That wouldn't be correct. But even the rinsing, there are certain cases you aren't allowed to do. If it's an old fish from last year, or it's a certain type of fish, that the rinsing is enough, because the rinsing with hot water completes it. It becomes mutter. It becomes fully completed and ready to eat. So this language that it's completed and it's ready to eat sounds like an Isser D'Oraisa. So there you see that hot water is enough to make an Isser D'Oraisa.